Hi, I'm Lynne with Soft Squares. Today we're going to learn how to make this block, which is called Courage. It is for Quilts of Valor. You can use it for anything you want, but this is one of the patterns that Quilts of Valor recommends, and we are doing this. We're going to all learn how to make this block, and those of you that are helping Pat out in Michigan, she's the one we've been gathering fabric for on blocks and anything quilt top and quilting related to help her and her small chapter out. If that's what you want to do and you want to learn how to make the blocks that we're doing to send to her, grab some red, white, and blue fabric and come along with me. I came up with these fabrics. This is a little bit of a steely blue with polka dots. This is kind of a brick red, maybe even a rusty red with little teeny lines in it. And then this is little tiny polka dots in it, and it's a barely off-white. It's not quite stark white. Well, three together look really pretty. And see next to the paper, it's just a little off-white. I think it's gonna work for this. So let's start cutting this up. Well, let's start with the bottom. Red. We have 8 2.5-inch squares and 2 3-inch squares. The blue, we have 8 2.5-inch squares and 2 5-inch squares. And then on the white, we have 2 5-inch squares, 2 3.5-inch squares, and 8 2.5 by 4.5. Then it says to start drawing lines for your diagonal. Any of you that have watched me for a while know I like to press So I'm going to show you how that works. The easiest thing to do, we're going to do the fabric that has the print. That's the easiest. So all I do is take the fabric and I'm going to fold it wrong sides together, corner to corner, put my iron on it. You don't want to stretch and pull, you just want to give it a little bit of a seam, and there's my stitch line. And if it has you sewing on both sides, then you sew on a 1/2 inch on both sides. Or you could take your marking tool and you can draw that line. And I'm sure there's some other ways that don't come to mind. There's the tape that's on the machine that you can do and just follow. That's not as easy when you have bigger squares. But anyway, I'm going to go through and do that with all these. So my reasoning for how I do this and why I put it on the side that I do is when you pair your families up, your two colors, you want your right sides together, and that has a little polka dot print to it, so hopefully you can see that has a print. And whites are harder, or white on white is hard to see front and the back, which is why I chose to do the darker color, because I can definitely see the difference between the front and back. Anyway, we're going to pair it together like this, and then take it to the machine and just actually on this pattern it tells you to go 1/4 inch from the seam on both sides. Okay, so I'm gonna fold these, pair them up, and head over to the machine. Oh, I was gonna say, the reason it's face to face though is it's easier to sew in the valley than it is on a peak. So if this were to be the other way around, where you had this on top, especially if you needed to sew right on that middle, that's really hard to sew right on that. So just remember, it's easier to sew in the valley than the peak. So you want it to go down. Okay, now this is the right side there. Let's get this one ready. So it's telling me sew on both sides and then square them up, and I'm going to use the block lock, which is my favorite squaring up tool, and in the end you're going to have 4 total of this size. Oh, I did that backwards even though I just talked about it. Glad I looked at it. Sometimes I just do things without thinking. That would be one of those. We have this. Now we need to make 4 of these that mirror this, and I already have 4 of this one. So to do that, we're gonna press our little corners in, and then they're gonna sit right here. I've got 2 more of those to do, and then we have the other color, and they are gonna go on that corner. So I'm going to finish drawing my lines, scoring my lines, however you do it. This is what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to take everything to the machine. I don't have to do these, but I'm going to sew them together. I'm going to make 2 sets of this with the red. And it's going to go face down, and you're going to sew 1/4 inch from both sides. And then you're going to cut it down the middle. So you're going to end up with 4 half square triangles. And the same goes for this, same thing. Sew down both sides of the center line, cut it in half, press them, you have 4. So the 2.5 inch squares get paired up with the 4.5 inch block, and you're gonna mirror image them. Oh, I do not want to make it that way. I want to make sure they are going that way, because you want 4 going this way and 4 going this way. Okay, let's go. So, okay, now remember I've already made one of these. So before I start anything, and before I forget, I'm going to start working on those to make sure I don't make more of the same one. And all I have to do really is just get one going. 1, 2, 3, there we go. And that will mirror it goodness. Okay. Now this one, you do sew right on that line. So another reason why the ditch, folding it the way I did when I pressed it, is good is because there's not a peak. It's really hard to sew on a peak. Now we're going in the valley and I can easily do that. You know, it works better when you turn the machine on. It's amazing. So you see how I'm using my tape here to keep straight? Even though I have a line here, I really probably don't need the line with my tape, but I will still always do it. But there's my line from the crease, but I've got it lined up with the red line, which I have lined up with my center line. And I just want to keep that point right there. And I actually find it's easier to follow this than the crease on the fabric for me. All right, right side, wrong side, right side. And then when I do this, I'm chain piecing, but I find it easier to start here than it is to start over here because there's more fabric over here for it to grab and start pulling through. Sometimes my other machine, specifically my FAF, doesn't like it. So I just don't do that. Okay, now these I'm gonna put to the side and get them later. We're just gonna keep chain stitching. And then from now on, until I go back to that block, all of these are going to be down both sides of that line. And you may find it easier to, once you get them together, to pin them. Oh, remember, off to the side. I almost didn't do it. So in this case, this line, because I'm going a 1/4 inch off, which is the width of my foot, this right here, see how it says 1/4 inch? If I line my line up with the 1/4 inch line, this red will show us where the needle is going to go, and it's a 1/4 inch from that center. Now at this point, I really am looking more up to my line, but I'm kind of using two methods, just showing you different ways that you can do half square triangles without marking on your fabric. I'm not opposed to marking on the fabric. It's just one more thing to do. All right. Definitely don't want to sew over the pin. Your needle doesn't like it. It's amazing. Oh, okay, now these I forgot to press. So I'm gonna actually do this. Ooh, I might regret it. Let's try it anyway. But I am sewing. I am not going to do this that way. So handy, I just have a regular pen. So I'm just gonna draw on the blue. This is the third way to make half square triangles. And then there's actually half square triangles on a roll, which is put out by Emma. It's actually them. And you put the paper and you follow the lines on the paper and line the paper fabric up with it. You do tend to get a little more waste, but they're really precise. You don't have a lot of squaring up. All right, we're done with that one. And guess what? I do have triangle on a roll. So this is telling you to get this size of looks like we're getting 3-inch finished half square triangles. They come in all different sizes. You would lay 8.5 inch wide fabric, and you would follow the, actually the width is 8.5 this way, and you can go as far as you want and you just keep going, but you're going to follow the dotted lines, follow the arrows where it tells you to go, and then when you're all done, you're going to cut on the solid lines, and then really all you have to do is cut off your dog ears. For the most part, it should be square. You still want to check it, but this is really pretty square. I don't have this size of a triangle to make right now, so we're not gonna do it. But now you know of another way. Let's go back to this. So same thing, I just want to go 1/4 inch to the side, which is the width of my quilting foot. Okay, we're going to go back to this one and put our square triangle on like this. Now, if we were doing flying geese, the flying geese block looks like this. And you have to complete this where you trim it and cut it off before you can put this side on. But we don't have to because we're not doing that block. Nothing is in my way. Just have to make sure to keep that from getting in your way. And again, on this block, the 2.5 by 4.5, we do so right on the line. Lots of little triangles. If you wanted to save these, I still hold on to them, but if you wanted to do something with them right away, you could go a 1/2 inch out from that line when you're at the sewing machine and stitch another line which would actually go right there. Let me show you. It would actually go right there. That would be your stitching line. So when you cut it apart, we still have what we need, but this is already sewn together where these ones are loose. And then you have a pre-made half square triangle in this teeny size. So I'm being really careful to make sure I pull that back before I pull that back, because that other fabric does overlap and it could get cut. So just be really careful if you do it this way, or just do one side at a time. Two for one. Okay, so now it's time to press them open, and then I will show you how I square them up using the block lock and by using a regular ruler that doesn't have this special groove. You want to press to the dark side. Easiest way to do that is put the dark side up. You can set your seam by doing that, which tends to make the thread go flat that you had just sewn, and then when you open it up you peel it back towards the dark side and then it will lay flatter. So just remember, dark side up, and you don't have to do that first step. It does make the blocks lay flatter though, and sometimes it's not enough to notice, and honestly sometimes I don't do it. And I am using a dry iron. I do like steam, but I have heard from other people that they have had more success and their irons last longer by not putting water in them. And I decided to give it a try, and I really do like it. I also don't do well with heat, and with the steam coming from the iron, it just made it warmer. So I'm comfortable too. So this one, it naturally will flip open. If it doesn't, I would still just, encourage you to press the whites open to the dark side. And the reason we do that is we don't want that seam to show up underneath. And I will show you what a seam looks like that is underneath. So on this one, I'm going to show you, if I do it in a different way that I don't like, I'm going to show you how to do it, so how to fix it. Plus I want to show you to prove this point. So if you don't pay attention, you just open it up, or you do the white side up and you do it this way. Okay, and I actually grabbed one that's probably not very good, because when I cut I didn't have a whole lot of seam right there to see, but you can see white you can see the white seam through that, where when you press to the dark side it disappears under the darker fabric. It also will make it so that your blocks will come together a little easier, because a lot of times they will offset. So now I'm going to fix that. I still could leave it, but I don't want to. And so I'm going to press this open, but I'm going to use this Best Press or spray starch or just a water bottle. See, it doesn't want to lay flat. This product is a non-tacky starch. And see, that's laying a lot better. I still want to do this. And it actually has a little more body to it than this one. Well, you can't tell. Let me do this other one, because that one has a little bit of the starch on it, which is not really a starch. Well, clear starch and sizing alternative. I don't think it's starch. But, so this one I just did the normal way, just with that. And I don't know if you can see, but this one is a little stiffer. You actually might want to do this, because it does make your piecing a little easier, because then you have, it's not so floppy. And since I did one, I want to play with that, with those. I kind of forget that I have this. It's really good for when you have a stubborn seam, stubborn iron mark, like what I had put on that when I went the wrong way. Okay, so there are all of those and all of these. Now we're going to square them up. These are my favorite square up tools, block. I do have some in my shop. If you can't find them there, please send me an email. I will order more. I don't know how quickly they will, or how long they'll be in inventory. So anyway, the way this works is there is a groove right here, and that is for this, and it will fit in that groove and hold it. So it's blocking. So I'm actually trying to push it that way and trying to push it that way, and it goes that way really well. But that's because that is down in there. I love this. The corners are so sharp because you're always on the corner. So just center it so you've got fabric going to each of the 4 sides. Rotating mat is great. This one happens to be rotating, but it's so small and doing okay without it. Alright, so this happens to be the exact size of these blocks. So that's going to be perfect for this, but this is not terribly common. It is a 2.5 by 4.5. It's a Lori Holt Cute Cuts ruler, also on my website. But what you're going to do is you're going to put this on here and just square it around. In this case, I wasn't totally square. You can see I probably, I'm going to have to deal with the seam allowance and get that little corner in there, because I actually need that in there. I'm not very good at sewing straight lines. So there's really not much to do take off of that. But there's that. But when you come over to here, you can just put this on here, square it up to 2.5. So your markings are here 1, 2.5. So this dotted line right here is the 2.5. So we can see, and you want to have the corner, the point in the corner. If you put this on the line, and I don't care about the mat marks, you put this on the line and then you square it up, except I'm assuming that this is square. Did that make any sense to you? It's hard to tell if it's square. I'm going to switch to this one. This right here. This happens to have some markings on it. You see how that lined up right there? So I've got my 90-degree mark. This is 3, this is 5.5, difference is 2.5. This is not as easy, but you can work with it. But I want to make sure I have this line going as straight as I can, and right there is where I want to just, obviously there's not much to take off, do that. And then do the other side. This is kind of a different ruler. I'll be honest, I'm not sure where I got it. 1, 2.5. So here's our 2.5 mark right here. This diagonal line right here is my 90-degree mark. And really what I'm doing right now is I'm just squaring it on the right and the left side. I don't care about the markings underneath it. But that right there means it's 2.5 wide. We still have to go this way. So you can see it takes a little longer, but that's okay. We're still going to make it work. So I'm going to just switch to this other ruler, wherever I put it, just because this is when this would be handy. Because all you have to do is make sure your right and left, these two, top and bottom, I guess, are squared, and then go to your 2.5 mark. So here's 1, 2.5. So we need to trim a little bit off. And we know we're straight if we can get everything on the side to the edge. And that's what I cut off. And we're going to switch to the other side. There are some rulers that are smaller like this that have the 90-degree lines. This ruler just happens to have, what are the different degrees? That's the 90, then the other two. Oh, it says right here, it's 45-degree to make a 90-degree angle. Okay, I knew I was saying it wrong. And then it has a 60-degree mark going right here and a 30-degree mark. So this is handy if you need lots of options. It's also on my mat right here, which I wasn't even looking at. So look, I can line up that point to that point. And we want the point of the seam, because I've already trimmed one side, right? And then I would trim this down, make sure 2.5. It's a little harder, but let's finish doing this one, and then we're gonna go back to the other because it's so much faster and so much more precise, but we did it. Okay. In the end, that's all you want, is to look like that. I'm going to do this one. So the trick to this, and I always do it backwards, you just saw me do it. The words block lock you want on the light side because you've pressed to the dark and that seam is going that way. And the very center of the ruler happens to be right here. So it's allowing for the fold, or what's turned under, to go that way, and you need it to line up on that. So if you line it up this way accidentally, see how it's kind of hooked right there, and that's the whole point of why this is so good. And I have a super thin seam allowance because of how I trimmed it. So anyway, put the words on the light block, or whichever way you pressed away from. Ta-da! Look how simple that was, and how square it is. The reason I'm spending so much time showing you how to do these different techniques, which might be something that you may be aware of, but I have been asked to make this video to help the gals that are doing the Quilts of Valor in that area, because they're learning how to make quilt blocks. So I am doing a tutorial on how to make the block and some tips for them that they may or may not know. And honestly, it's a good refresher, and maybe you will learn something you didn't know. All right, let's go back to this one. This, I can't sew straight. Look how awful that is. It is kind of convenient that this ruler is the right size. Clearly, I have a lot to come off over there. And just a smidge. So I'm going to be putting, when I line these up, just seeing where the edge actually really is, and probably go a little thinner in my seam allowance. Or I could unpick this and move the line over, because this one is off quite a bit. In the end, I promise you won't even know where that is. On my quilt, you want to get, so you're not doing that very often. I guess I'm so used to being off, I've just learned how to compensate. So despite my best efforts to put it on straight, it's not perfect. Okay, let's do this again. Yeah. Okay. All right, so now let's lay these out. So now I have 4 of each of these. The ones I made before, the ones I just made. I have 4 of these and 4 of these. Now the block that we're making looks like this. We are going to make 4 sections that look like this. So shows us how we're going to lay it out. And I guess I'll put that right here. So we're going to put the blue, and then the red goes right here. This one goes here, and this one goes here. And that is our block. We're going to make 4 of those, and then we're going to put all 4 together so they look like this. And then when you put a whole bunch of them together, it looks like this. I'm really excited. Let's go sew some blocks together. I'm going to keep them in their place on here. Oh my gosh. See, I did it again. I'm directionally challenged. I'm going to keep them right here in order. And the way I'm going to sew them is in sections. What is going on here? In sections. So I'm going to sew these 2 together and these 2 together and do 4 sets, and then when I'm done I will sew them together. Let's go to the other view. This is how I'm going to work with that really strange block. See how I had all that extra right there? This is the piece that's going to go on top of it. It actually is going to go like this. But the way I'm going to make sure that this unit squares up is make sure everything here is straight, back both sides, and when you flip it over you can see this is where I'm short. So I'm going to sew with this side up so I can see that and make sure my threads come over enough, but this is where I'm taking it up in my seam, and for some reason I feel like it keeps shifting on me. Oh boy, that pen has seen better days. Okay, so that's how I did it. That's how you take it up in the seam. When I open it up, we are good. This is the seam allowance, so when I put the blocks together, those will disappear. is a good place to stop and press. I don't have a little pressing station set up right here where I'm sitting. I don't feel like getting up and walking 4 feet. But at this stage, we're actually okay to finger press. I'm going to show you what that is. So we're going to take these 2 blocks that I had just made, and I'm going to press them to one side. Okay, I'm going to do that with all of those. And then I'm going to take the other 2, and we're going to open it up and see where it's going to go. And because we're going to be joining seams right there, I want to make sure that I am pressing the opposite direction. So in this case, we want it to go down towards the blue. And really, I probably should have started with the blue because we don't see that seam. Plus, there's a lot of seams to want to work against us. And that would be the logical thing for me to do anyway, is to press it down. Now this is just a finger press, just to give it a little bit of direction. And then we're going to put these together and see how they nest, which is what happens when they're opposite. And then you're going to get a really nice fit in there. And if I can, my preference is to sew with the fabric on top that has the most seams. So there's a seam here, there's a seam here, there's a seam here. There's only 2 seams over here. It really doesn't matter. I just feel like I have a little more control to keep things from flipping up and over, because it's really easy to get the foot hooked on that and to see that it's bent over. And you can see my non-straight block is surfacing. All right. This is where a clip could be handy. I think I'll just do the clip. And again, because that block was a little screwy, I want it on top anyway. This one. Oh, dang. I thought I was going to lose my thread. Okay, so I'm keeping to the outside, which is where the true size of the block is. And then this has shifted on me. I feel like I'm all thumbs today. Okay, so now we've made 1 block. And then when you press it, which we'll do in a minute, it'll be really flat. But you can see on the back side, these have gone different directions. And then I'll probably press it this way because it looks like it wants to do that anyway. Path of least resistance. And there's more seams. And you'll get the hang of it. Most patterns will give you directions on which way to press. Honestly, pressing is easier, especially if you're just starting. But this is a way to finger press. There's also little rollers, or I don't have one here, like a wood thing that has like a flat edge, and you just use that against the seam. It's still a temporary pressing method. You still want to hit it with the iron. Okay. Let's go press them open and join them. Because a finger press, it might be easier to start looking at the back side to see what my intentions were with the direction. And as you can see, it is not very square. Story of my life. Those two look right. Not that this is wrong, but I pressed them the other direction. It is okay. Now we're going to put the 4 blocks together, and I'm going to offset those 2 that were pressed in a different way to help them nest. Because you see, let's see, where is it? Yep, that's it. That's not doing its thing. So now we have kind of a problem because that doesn't want to lay flat. It really does want to go up. Stop. This is where this is very handy. Okay, so as I put these together, we're gonna do seams this way, and this are going in opposite directions, which is great. This and this are going in the same direction. So really, I want this one to go, oh, now I'm quite confused. If you can, press them so they're going different directions. That's all I can tell you. And I'm going to leave these lined up and show you what I do when I did that. These 2 are offsetting. No, they're not. They're matching up. These 2 are matching up. I really only have this one block, that one place. Oh well. Okay, so now we're going to do this and do this. Stitch down to here and then down to here. Don't cut the thread between the 2. I'll show you what happens. So I had sewn from here down to here. I want to try to make these a little flatter. Well, that one, I think it needs to go down. Because otherwise it was turning, and I really do want those 2 to be offset. I think I solved that problem. Anyway, when you open these up, notice they're still attached. Life is so much easier when you just do that. And all you have to do is this. But we want to make sure that the seams nest, and since I'm standing here at the iron, I don't need to finger press, but you can. And notice I'm pressing each side a different direction. And you can see that white line through there, but you have no choice here. So when I nest them, there they are. They're offsetting. Over here, I don't have the offsetting happening, so I might force it over. That's what I did here. I just lifted it up and laid it down on the one side, and then this one's doing well. Just so you know, over here I chose to leave it matched up. It is a little bulky, but it worked. We're done. Let's press it and inspect it. Then I am going to square it up. That's off. You know what? That is my seam where I left everything going the same direction. We're going to use the seam ripper. That is noticeable enough, it really bugs me. Like that's barely off. That's barely off. That noticeable. So if you look at the fabric or the block you made and you're not sure if you want to leave it or unpick it, walk away, look at it again, and if you do that 3 times and it still bugs you every time, it's going to bug you forever. So pick it out. And this one I didn't have any question at all. I don't like it. There's a lot of different seam rippers out there. Oh, that's even better that it did that. Okay. So, we want these to press in different directions. And actually that was supposed to go down and it flipped up, and I remember that happening, and I thought, well, maybe it's what I needed, because I knew I was a little off. So I'm just going to give it a good press both directions and then go back. Make sure that they are lined up. And this time I'm actually going to start up here and work my way this way. I think I need to unpick a little bit more, because you can ease it in, but that's a lot of space. So if I unpick it farther, it gives me a little more space to kind of ease that little difference in. There. Much better. Much better. Again, line them up, offset them, and now I have more space to ease that in. I'm still not lined up. This is where all thumbs comes in. Ah, there. So, see, easing, I'll just be tugging on it, stretching it, and it will lay flat. When we're all done, it'll be good. How do you think I did? Oh, better. Much better. We're going to flatten it, and then we'll like it even more. Just have those little threads from when I unpicked it. Now when I put those together, somehow I didn't sew a straight line, and I have a little dimple. Yeah, I can see I went up and then down. Let's go straight. Fix it. A little bit of a mess, but you can see I went straight. That looks better. And so does that. And I could call it good. I'm gonna square it up though. You definitely want to square it up before you put them together. But if you decide to send it in unsquared, they probably would love it if you would square it up, but this is where you could call it good. There that is. Now let's square it up. My mat happens to be 13 wide, so 1 through 13. So I know if I put this in the center of my mat, I should have 1/4 of an inch all the way around it. And there's the center. If you have a 12.5 inch squaring up tool, use it. If you don't, just do your best to put this on the center line. And half of 13 is 6.5. So here's right here is my center. You can see on this mat, oh, I have had little markings over time. They've just worn off. But anyway, there's my center. Here's my center. There's the center. And that's the center. So now we're going to square at 12.5, which in this case, because of where it's laying, is actually at the 1/4 inch mark from the side. We put this on here at the 1 mark, 1 going both ways. We are 12.5 and just shy of 12.5, but honestly it will be there when it's put together, and I'm going to try to stretch it a little bit with the sizing. When they match the block steps end to end, they will naturally conform to each other. Alright, I already have a block on the wall. Here's my second one. Look how cool they look together. My goal is to send them at least 2 that match, although you can do whatever you want. I have a bunch more of this fabric. It really depends. I'm kind of feeling like I want to just make a whole bunch of them and send them the topper. But regardless, they're going to get these blocks. Whether I sew a whole bunch together and send them the top, or just the blocks. They are planning on making scrappy blocks, so you don't have to have them all match, and that's why this is a good stopping point. They have got 4x4 to make this quilt, which looks like it's finished size. Oh, and then I put a 5.5-inch border on it. Using 16 blocks. Oh, 62 by 62 with 16 blocks, which is 4 across, and a 5.5-inch border, and then it has the stop border. So there you go. Good luck with that. Please let me know what you're doing, and the place to send them is to a Quilts of Valor chapter that's in Michigan, and the address for that is in the description of this and most of my latest videos. So she could use whatever help you can give. She's asked us to make a bunch of these blocks, which will help her group out a lot. They have a great need and they don't have a lot of people. So there we go. And those of you that are helping to make this, thank you for thank you for supporting this group. Have a great day.